I have no direction or goals in my life at the moment. What can I do to regain my compass in life?
Well, you talked about that a little bit in your intro. So there's this line in the New Testament, which is kind of mysterious, you might say. But it's really an instruction set. And the line is approximately, knock and the door will open, ask and you will receive, seek and you will find. And you think, well, no way, that can't possibly be true. But it's true if all of that is undertaken seriously. So one of the things that Tammy and I learned to do when we were trying to adjudicate our arguments, and we both tried to abide by that, was like, if I'm upset with her, let's say, it's clearly because she's done something wrong. One of the things that I'm required to do is let her know what my conditions for satisfaction are. It's like, what do I want? And I have to be able to tell her. And I might object, well, if you love me, dear, you'd know what I want. And people say that to each other all the time, and they should immediately get slapped for that. It's just like, I'm too stupid to know what I want, let alone figure out what you want. You don't even know what you want. So it's good to kind of clue your partner in. Here's what I would... Now, that doesn't mean once you let the person know that they're necessarily going to deliver it, but they might, especially if you also allow them the luxury of doing it stupidly and badly, at least to begin with. You know, your wife might tell you, when I put some effort into getting ready to go out, I'd like you to say something nice. It's still a bit vague. It's like, okay, dear, exactly what would you like me to say? Well, that's an annoying thing for your wife to have to think through, and it's annoying for you maybe to have to mouth those words, but, you could do it stupid and badly 20 times and maybe get a little expert at it, and by the 100th time, you're like world expert at compliment deliverer, and you can encourage her to pursue her interest in attire, let's say, and why isn't that a good thing for both of you? And so, but that's all dependent on whether or not you're willing to let yourself know what you want. And that's all dependent on whether or not you're willing to ask. And so one of the things you can ask yourself, and this is very useful, is what would your life have to look like in order for it to justify itself to you? And so why would I put it that way? Well, your life is hard. It's full of suffering. It's full of malevolence, for that matter. It's full of malevolent suffering. That's coming for sure. And that's a heavy burden to bear. And you might say, well, it's so heavy that nothing at all could possibly justify it. And I think that's not a productive attitude. I think if you watch your life, you see that there are things that will grip you that do appear to justify the weight of existence. And I think you can commune with yourself, which is a form of thought. It's a form of meditative prayer, but that's a form of thought. And the thought is, what do I want? If I could have what I wanted and needed, what would that look like? You don't know where you're going or why, the person who asked this question. So let's decompose the problem a little bit. I don't know what to do with my life. Well, that's a pretty vague problem, because your life that's a big, complex, multidimensional thing, and the probability that you're going to be able to formulate an answer to the question, what's the meaning of my life, is pretty much zero. Because, well, what do you want, a one-sentence answer? Like, it's a one-sentence question. You think there's a one-sentence answer? That's not helpful. And so what I often did practically in my clinical practice, and this is useful to know, especially if you're a bit lost, is, well, where do people generally derive their sense of meaning? And it's not that complicated to figure that out. And this is also a conservative perspective in some sense. Well, most people need or want an intimate relationship and some family interaction. Maybe that's children, maybe it's with your parents or your siblings, but zero family interaction is generally not part of the optimized human condition. Most of us would like to have a friend or two. We need a job or a career to keep body and soul together, but also so that we're in harness and we can pull against a weight that in a noble and productive and generous manner. We perhaps need to be engaged in something creatively. We have to take care of ourselves mentally and physically. We should adopt some civic responsibility. We need to protect ourselves against major sources of hedonistic and impulsive temptation. There's 8 things. It's like, well, pursue one of them. Start there. No, when I dealt with my clients who were depressed, unhappy, let's say, the first thing I would do with them is walk them through that analytic process. It's like, do you have anything in place in any of these domains? Sometimes I had people who were doing pretty good in all 8 areas and were still unhappy. Those people were depressed, technically, right? Because their lives were actually in pretty good order, but they were miserable. There was something wrong with them. They were ill in some way that was lowering their mood, destroying their positive emotion. Other people would be batting 0 on all 8 fronts. Like, they weren't depressed, they just had terrible lives. And so, really, and so what I would do with those people is, well, look, like, here's 8 things that aren't in place in your life. It's no bloody wonder you're miserable and everything seems meaningless except for the suffering, because that's a meaning too. It's like, why don't we start working incrementally in a few of these areas, and then we can just evaluate and see if that's helpful. And it's almost invariably helpful. And part of that is, well, specify. You ask yourself, well, what do I need that I don't have? Well, maybe I'd like to have a partner. Okay, well, I can't just leap from not having a partner to being happily married in one fell swoop. There's intervening steps. One of the things I used to do with my clients who are lonesome is say, well, look, have you tried online dating? No, I'm too afraid. It's like, well, no wonder you're afraid of it. You have your reasons. But we could start small. It's like, why don't you write out a dating profile? Don't post it. Just go online one of these sites and write out a profile. Who are you? What do you have to offer? And what do you want? Think it through. Write it out. Come up with a coherent story about a coherent representation about who you are, and then figure out what you want. That maybe when you develop that in a manner that feels solid to you and reliable and genuine, and you've also developed a vision of the person that you're trying to attract, that would help you feel confident in your happiness. If you actually met that person, well, then you're ready to go. Launch it on the site and talk to the person. First maybe it's just text, and then maybe it's coffee, and there's incremental ways of doing this, and you can do that with all of those 8 domains. It's like, get yourself a life.